Alright, I couldn't resist putting the singlet back on because I am actually rather amused by it. But secondly, I kind of want to, despite the fact that right now I am just barely hanging on by a thread, just energy wise, just recovery's been rough. But, anyways, the reason why this particular subject is very important for me to cover, especially with somebody that I've mentioned this before that I have a body scissors, head scissors fetish. I fetishize legs, I fetishize spandex and things like that. And really, like my community as far as that fetish goes is pretty scattered. Anybody who's actually part of that community knows that. I've got a friend in Washington, D.C. I've got people I've talked to down in Brazil. I have another friend in Florida. There's another couple that are in different corners of Canada. There's not a whole lot else. Right, we are very, very scattered, and so finding like-minded people can actually start to feel a little bit alienating from time to time. And this is really important because going into this as a broader subject, and I do want to put in the caveat for those who are really, really burnt out on politics, that some politics are going to make it into this discussion, because I don't think that we can have a discussion going about the subject of, especially going into Pride Month in a couple days, where you can't touch on politics at least a little bit. And so one of the things, and I'll just go ahead and dive right into that, is that as somebody who was born in the 80s, I am somebody who, by the time that I was coming out as a gay man, pride parades were very, very common. People didn't tend to attack pride parades at that point in time. They were pretty peaceful, and people came out and they were very enthusiastic and supportive. And in recent years, that has not always been the case. A couple years ago, me and a lot of the leather guys ended up having to show up, and I was blown away because we showed up for the Trans Pride Parade because the Proud Boys were supposed to show up, and they were planning on starting some shit. And so I thought it was just going to be me and a couple other guys that showed up. And what was really, really awesome is that I showed up and there were just thousands of people who weren't trans, were not marching on the parade, and we just made this big old shield that went all the way around the trans people in the parade, and we marched them across Capitol Hill into Cal Anderson Park. And once we got there, we walked people home, we walked people to their cars, because the Proud Boys were there, we did see them, and they wanted to start some shit. And that was, a big part of where we are right now politically as a nation. And, we think about, the Stonewall riots, which were kind of the very first Pride Parade. They were an expression of saying, we're tired of being abused. We want to have our safe spaces. We want to be free to express ourselves. And, when I say free to express ourselves, for those who are not aware, the reason why the Stonewall riots happened was that Stonewall was an inn, I believe, and a bar, and it was a safe place for gay people to hang out. And the police would show up there, and they would raid the place, and they would arrest people, and they'd beat up people. I'm sure over years, people died. And so the Stonewall riots were, the first Pride Parade, and it was violent. It was people standing up to say, I have the right to just exist. And, we get into this bubble of being in 2024 and thinking that, that kind of thing doesn't happen anymore. But, I'm here, I was in Seattle, now I'm in Tacoma, and one thing that recently made national headlines was that on one night, and this wasn't nearly as big for me as it was for a lot of people that were not aware of this, is that we had in the Seattle area, we had a basically mafia ring that was running a bunch of brothels, strip clubs, and things like that. And in order to undercut their revenue, Seattle passed a law that prohibited basically any type of nudity, pornography, or anything like that from taking place in the same place where you would have nudity or anything that was particularly sexual. And then there came around this idea of what is bar legal, which, you have to have your ass crack covered by about 1 inch of fabric at least. And so that has been a law that has persisted, I think probably 20 years after the Don, the leader of that mafia ring, was arrested, and all the strip joints basically collapsed because they had no revenue source because they couldn't sell liquor where the strippers were. And so it became this tool to basically target gay bars because, you know, we show porn in gay bars. Oftentimes we walk around in just jock straps, which obviously does not follow the bar legal laws. And the, you know, the Seattle Eagles basically kind of works it into their budget to pay off the constant fines that they were getting from Seattle police going in there and just writing them up on random days. You know, whenever they were having a shortfall in their budget, they would show up and they would fine them. And the same thing was probably true for the Cuff. The same thing was probably true for Seattle's and any number of different bars that we have here in Seattle. And then one night about 2 months ago, the Seattle PD decided that they wanted to go in, and the Liquor Control Board and whatnot, and they wanted to fine multiple bars within the same night. And this created a lot of outrage. I think they hit about 3 bars. And, you know, this became a thing that I'm forgetting his name now. He was a Seattle Times writer or a Stranger writer who basically broke this as a national news story. And so the Seattle government had to decide, you know, what are we going to do about this? And eventually they are actually currently working on changing the laws so that they don't have justification to continue to target gay safe spaces, right? And, you know, so when we think about, you know, whether or not we have really progressed that far as a society, I think that we are oftentimes spoiled as gay people in this day and age into believing that gay pride is just a party, right? That we're just going there and we're going to celebrate. And, you know, the struggle that made that happen, you know, a lot of people got hurt. A lot of people lost their lives. People were harassed. People were murdered. And so, you know, not to like equate where I'm going with this too much, because I mean they're not necessarily on the same level, but when we think about the safe spaces that we create, you know, it's not that far. There was a shooting in Colorado in a gay bar that I think killed 4 or 5 people. And then, of course, there was the Pulse nightclub. So it's not like we as a gay community are not the subject of attack. We definitely most certainly still are. And I believe that the you know, the far right now and the Trump administration, or what could be, are definitely a threat, and we need to be taking that a little bit more seriously. And you know, again, I don't really want to make this about politics too much, but I think that we need to understand where we are in this day and age in this time. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about that kind of sparks this is partially one of the reasons why this group exists, why this channel exists, is that I wanted to make wrestling a lot more accessible to people who don't necessarily have access to clubs or don't feel safe going into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools or whatever out there, because there are schools that definitely have a homophobic attitude, especially a lot of the more traditional Brazilian coaches definitely have that. And of course you can be in different parts of the country where you will have people that are rather tone deaf to who gay people are and are very right to exist. So, you know, this is a way for me to gift to you guys, and hopefully you guys understand and learn to gift to each other the experiences that you are privileged enough to have for those who aren't. And, you know, this kind of leads into the subject that I really wanted to make the subject of this video, but obviously, you know, it feels a little bit in context, like it's not as big of a deal. But when I think about one of the big nightclubs in Seattle when I was first coming out was called Neighbors, and it's still there, and it is near Broadway and Pike on Capitol Hill. And it was originally owned by a drag queen. I don't know who it's owned by now, but one of the things that happened was that over a long period of time, a lot of gay guys were bringing their fag hags, you know, women that like to hang out with men because they, gay men because they are safe, but they're still male companionship, and they would go into the gay bars together, right? And then what would happen is that over time, they would start bringing their girlfriends, and then over time, you know, they'd start bringing their boyfriends, and then, you know, after a while, Neighbors kind of became a place that became rather uncomfortable for gay people to go to, because there just were so many people that did not fit within our community, and they were the very people that were toxic that we were trying to avoid in the first place. And kind of the same thing has happened, and I completely lost my train of thought there for a second as far as where the next thing is. Oh yes, Dory Alley and Folsom. You know, when we look at Dory Alley and Folsom and what has happened over the years, you know, that again, when Folsom first started, that was an expression of, hey, look, we exist, we're not going anywhere, you need to get used to our existence and stop trying to deny our right to just exist in this country. And there are still places such as Boston where BDSM is basically illegal, and so there aren't, as far as I know, BDSM clubs out there. And so, you know, in certain areas, there's not a right to exist. Same thing goes for the trans community, which is why I did the trans video about a month and a half ago, was that, you know, these safe spaces do need to exist, and there are definite efforts. When John Oliver just did a video on libraries that are where local small communities are trying to erase LGBTQ people from existing in those communities. And so, you know, what's that have to do with Folsom? Well, again, the same thing that happened at Neighbors is kind of happening at Folsom, where Folsom was this event, and Dory Alley are these events that you know, gay Leathermen could come and gather and exist, and then be part of a community and basically celebrate their own existence. And now it's become kind of a freak show where people come in and they are there to look at the circus. They're not there to participate. They're not there because that's their community. They're there because they want to see the freak show. And so this brings me to the point that I wanted to make, is that oftentimes I'm going up to see Seattle's on Capitol Hill, and once a month they have a fetish night there. And that fetish night, almost every time that I'm in line, and oftentimes the line can be long and take a long time to get in, there are people there who do not know it's fetish night, and when I inform them that it is fetish night, they get very confrontational with me, as if I have any control over what fetish night is. And so, you know, I explain to them, you know, it's a once a month thing, one fucking night out of the month where people come and they represent their fetishes. And they say, well, you know, what if my day clothes happen to be my fetish? Which is, you know, kind of a ridiculous thing to say, but it's also, you know, not because they're not saying it because their day clothes really are their fetish. They just want to get past the gatekeeping. And I understand that people are, you know, very sensitive about this concept of gatekeeping because, you know, you're keeping people out of a space that is meant to be more inclusive, and they want to be more inclusive across the board. But at the same time, you know, it's one of those things. It's like showing up at a well-known, all 100%, these are the rules, nude beach, and coming in and just wearing your normal beachwear and looking around and gawking at everybody. You are not respecting the space, you're not respecting the event and what's going on there. So when it comes to, you know, a fetish night, it's really about, you know, feeling in a way like you're not a freak. And that is, you know, in a way, it's coming out and saying, hey, here I exist. And you get to look around and you see that there are other people that look like you. right? And so, it's the same thing as having a gay bar in the first place. When we open up a gay bar or an LGBTQ bar or a lesbian bar, whatever it is, these are not there really to necessarily keep everybody out, but it's for people to not feel alone. It's for people to feel like there is community. It's for people to feel like they can be accepted in society. And so when you come to a fetish night, really you need to be bringing your full freak flag, right? And a lot of people go to these events and they just put on a harness because that is the easiest thing for them to do. They have a leather harness and they're just like, okay, it's gay wear. And this is just like standard issue, come out of the closet at this point. Completely ignoring the culture that harnesses originally came out of because it has just been appropriated by gay people. But I'm just going to put on a harness so that I can be allowed through the door and get drunk. And oh, look, there are other people out here who are expressing a legitimate fetish when you're not. And so it's one of those things that when it comes to these types of events and these types of spaces, you have to respect those spaces and understand why they exist in the first place. They exist so that people can feel less alone. It's so that people can feel safe and unjudged. And so, again, why bother doing this community project at all, especially since, over the last couple of years, I haven't been able to do the wrestling videos that I normally would do, where I would show you techniques and things like that, because I've been injured. And, but I've kept it going. I've started doing these talks and these videos because it's what I could do for you guys. And hopefully that a lot of the things that I've said has actually resonated with a lot of you, and what people hear when I'm saying them, or at least what I'm hoping people are hearing, is that you are not alone, that you are accepted, and that there are people that are like you. And it's one of the reasons why it's so important for me to try to get other voices moving in this community, for people who want to represent different expressions of fetishism, different expressions of wrestling, different ways that people approach these things, and have those conversations start going, because it's not necessarily always going to be about you, right? It's not necessarily when you go out there and you put yourself out there, it's not just you expressing yourself, but it's the other person who's hearing it, who has a very similar approach, or has a different or has a similar thing that they may not have access to, and maybe they're feeling alone, maybe they're feeling scared, or like they don't have a place in this world. And you put out your voice and you say, this is what who I am. Somebody else is going to hear that, and that's going to resonate with them, and that person is going to feel less alone and more accepted in the society, like they actually have a place. And that's why this is worth doing, even though I can't necessarily always do what I want, even though I'm not necessarily seeing the reciprocation that I want to be seeing, is because I know that some people are out there and they're hearing this, and it's making the world better. It's making them feel like there is some sense of community, or at least somebody out there who gets them. And so that's why I do it, and that's why I also believe in these safe spaces, even though, yes, there is a certain degree of gatekeeping that's happening, for one fucking night out of the year, or one weekend for Folsom, or one day for Dory Alley, or IML, or any one of these events that exist out here, Triangles Everywhere, what they do, is the reason why they exist is because there are so many people in the world who want to point at you and say that you are illegitimate. You are not somebody that has a place in their view of the world. And that's why, you can't talk about this without bringing up some level of politics, because so much of politics today is so tied into identity and who doesn't fit within that identity. And so for people who, just by being gay, you don't fit in the standard definition of what some people think should be allowed to exist. And it's really important for us to say, no, we do exist, and look, there are actually a lot more of us than we thought. There are a lot more people who identify the way that we do. And, even if you can't find people like that in your community who are exactly like you, you can find people that will support you, who will say that you are valid, who will say that you are not a freak, that this is who you are and you deserve to be here. So I think that there should be more fetish nights out there. I think that there should be more avenues for people to express their legitimate self in a very public way that hopefully moves us in the direction towards acceptance. But obviously, one of the caveats and one of the things that people might see this video and argue is that by becoming more visible, we become more targets, and that's generally true to a point. But if there's one thing that I've noticed and one thing that I've learned is that the loud people don't necessarily they're not necessarily in any kind of majority, right? When we look at the people that showed up for January 6th, they were a lot when they were all crammed in one space, but they came from all over the country to do that. When we look at if there's any kind of gauge here, we look at, Trump's continuing rallies, and they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and the amount of big, violent events that he has instigated have been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and becoming less common. And that's because people are losing steam. They're seeing that there are consequences, and because there is pushback from people that are supporting the existence of LGBTQ people, or supporting a woman's right to choose, or who view diversity in our country, as far as the colors of people's skins, religions, and things like that, as being something that actually enriches our country rather than diminishes it. And so the more that we show that we exist, and the more that we get support from more people and show people that we are not a threat, people can become more educated, the more rights that we will have to exist, and the fewer threats that will come. But of course, when people want to target something, they are going to target those who are very different, which is one of the reasons why it's very important right now to stand with the trans community, because they're the ones that are getting the strongest pushback right now as far as the LGBTQ population goes. So I'm sorry that I felt like I had to put politics onto this channel once in a while, but I don't think that you can, have a gay channel and not once in a while address these existential threats that we have to our community and who we are. And also understanding that, a lot of times gay people can be really tone deaf about, when it comes to other minorities, right? There are so many people that put on their profiles, I don't date rice being a slang for Asian people, and a very racist one and very offensive. Or, I definitely need that big black cock, or things like that, that do have very strong racist overtones to them. Or I don't mess with Latinos, or Indians have tiny penises, or any number of stereotypes that might be out there. Those are things that hurt our community, and we can be very judgmental and cruel people as far as the LGBTQ community goes. And so it's really, really important that we actually recognize that as a flaw and conduct ourselves in a way that is being more accepting, because guess what? We are a minority, and when the shit hits the fan, all of us minorities need to stand together in order to be able to go against whatever comes our way, right? Whether that is marching together, like, when we were surrounding that trans pride parade, we did that because they needed the support, even though we didn't look like them. We understand where they're coming from. We understand the threats that they're facing, because we're targets of those threats at one point in time as well. And whether we choose to acknowledge it, we still are. So yeah, that's what I have to say on the subject, guys. And I know that there are going to be dissenting opinions about things like fetish nights and special events that cater to a smaller group of the community, because we all want to be able to be allowed into our favorite bars when we want to go there. But at the same time, it's really important that we acknowledge that those things have a purpose, and that purpose is actually really, really well tied into the rest of the narrative of we just need this right to exist as gay people. And I will throw this out there because I just forgot to put it in earlier, but how often do we look at somebody who's wearing a Speedo or a wrestling singlet or something that shows somebody's figure, and they are more overweight, and people go, ugh, that doesn't, work with that guy's body. You know, again, these are types of events and things like that that give those people a place where they can actually go out and show that that is their fetish, and they're not wrong for having that fetish. And you know, body positivity is a thing. You know, we can be more positive and welcoming to those people. You know, they might not be your type, but you know, move on and, you know, scroll on, go on to the next person. You know, don't stand there and judge other people for their choices. You know, they have a right to exist as much as you do. So that's what I have to say. Thank you guys for watching. And there won't be one coming tomorrow, but who knows what will happen by Friday. I don't know, because my brain is just going 5 billion miles an hour right now, despite being exhausted. So yeah, thank you.